So the combat beta just got an update today. Well, for those of you watching it, it will be yesterday, but it just got another update and I figured I would go ahead and do a little bit of a video on it and some of my findings so far. Now, if you want a full list of updates that have happened to the combat beta so far for testing and whatnot, there will be a link down in the description below to the main RuneScape website where the article is posted. But suffice to say, a lot has changed. Now, the most notable thing is the hit cap is now raised to 30k, and that is for all combat styles. It is not just for necromancy anymore, at least in this combat beta, and it has kind of swapped the order of combat styles and which one is best and whatnot kind of on its head, because while necromancy is still strong, range right now in this combat beta I have found to be very strong. Same with melee. Melee in the past few years has kind of been suffering from the hit cap that is currently in game. Grim has been helping it a lot, but the reason for this is the fact that Berserk is a double damage ultimate rather than just 50% increase, and it has been fun in this update so far to just go through a few bosses and slap them up a bit with some giant 19 and 20k hits. From Dragon Claws, Overpower is pretty much hitting max hits at 30ks. A lot of abilities are going up and showing what they can truly do, and this is not even at bosses where you factor in Salve Amulet or Slayer tasks, sigils or Slayer perks, and other damage boosting things like that. I'll go ahead and just take a couple highlights from the stream that I did yesterday in order to paint a little bit of a picture of what melee can do. Oh, that's right, this got buffed. Okay, he just gets deleted. He just gets deleted, people. That felt like a 200% and it's 500. Mine still hit 60k. Oh, they do. Or they go fast one cycle with melee. That was the dumbest thing I've ever done. There was no rotation. There was no nothing. That was just, I don't know what that was. I don't have an answer. Oh, he's already skipped after 2 autos. What the What is this? Excuse me? So as you can see, melee is quite strong. Now there are a few other changes with melee specifically that are really helping this. Right now, Greater Fury is just guaranteed critting the next ability you use. In the live game, I believe it is a 10% chance to make the next ability after it a guaranteed crit. But right now, it is working as a guarantee no matter what. You press G Fury every 5.4 seconds, the ability or anything after that for 1 hit is then a guaranteed crit strike, which makes Zerk with Meteor Strike extra handy because you're guaranteeing more adrenaline over the course of your Berserk rotation. Another thing that has changed is the Leng passive is now gone. You cannot Hurricane while holding the Leng swords, and honestly this is a very welcome change. I think keeping Hurricane as a 2-hand ability is definitely for the best. The passive effect is now something known as Endless Frost, which as it states, attacks have a 17% chance to apply 1 primordial ice stack with each hit, and applying these stacks generate 5% adrenaline. Now if we go over here to the weapon spec, it will tell us that we destroy those targets around you with shards of ice from Leng, and then it gives some damage figures there. It's basically just a weaker Hurricane is all it is, and if you have some of those primordial ice stacks built up, it will then apply those stacks as a form of additional damage. Now I didn't really pay attention to the stacks too much. I still need to do some more testing in this beta to see what the actual worthwhile damage is, and what I assume people will do with the Zerk rotation now is just replace this Icy Tempest with where the Hurricane was, because I believe it was Barge, Hurricane, Destroy, if I'm not mistaken. That was the first 3 abilities of a Zerk. It might have had a basic in there or something like that, but I believe that 2 destroys will still be very good. However, D-Claw spam is very strong, but these are the main changes I have noticed so far. Obviously, hit cap removal is very strong. G Fury giving guaranteed crits allows you to weave it into your rotations and use it where you really need it. You can pretty much guarantee Overpower will always crit because Fury is only a 5.5 4-second cooldown, overpowers 30 seconds. You can pretty much line it up all the time. And it gives these swords a little bit more of a unique characteristic to them, rather than just allowing you to use another melee ability without having to switch and have it not share cooldowns with another one. And also, hopefully this will help bring back the price of Kopesh's and Drygores, being that they were kind of down in the dumps due to the fact that the tier 88 version of the swords in the live game also has the Hurricane passive. So in my opinion, this is a very worthwhile change. Greater Fury is definitely an interesting one. I could see it being very powerful and might need to be tuned back depending on what gets spreadsheeted out. Again, this is kind of just some initial testing. The hit cap removal definitely showcases the raw power that melee has, and I'll kind of agree that it probably should be on top right now. For one simple reason, that if we go over here into my bank, you'll notice I have all the gear here, and melee has all the T95s. It has an armor set, it has a dual wield, and it has a two-hander. And it also has a lot of supporting weapons, but magic only has one tier 95 right now, same with range. Range is still on T92 armor, even though this is significantly stronger than the Serenic counterpart. And magic again is on tier 92, and even at this point, I believe at time of recording right now, Tectonic is technically not best in slot because the Sliske armor effect gives you more crit chance. However, I don't own it because I haven't been doing much magic in the live game, and I assume Tectonic will probably get some type of set effect to help counteract this, but I digress. So seeing melee be very strong in this combat beta is pretty reassuring, and it makes sense with how many items that it has in game right now. I would like to maybe see some updates that allow us to turn either the helm and the scourge into either enchantments or combine them with weapons or something along those lines. I'm sure there's many creative outlets there that could be figured out. Now, I'm not really sure what happened to range in this update, but it felt a lot more realistic as far as a combat style. On the first few iterations of this beta, range was significantly stronger than everything else because of the god arrows giving it a free 15% damage for basically nothing, and with how strong Darkbow SGB adding an ECB on top of that in for extra damage, and how easy Darkbow can go past the hit cap. We've seen examples of this at Zami. Range absolutely is still on top right now, and I believe it edges out melee in a few use cases, if not most use cases on the beta. However, it didn't feel as blatantly strong. However, I have not fully tested it. I did a couple of attempts at Raksha with it, and I wasn't really getting any success, probably because it was the beginning of the stream and I was uncaffeinated, so most likely it's just a skill issue, and I definitely need to go to a few other places to really get a grip on range. But from what others have been saying in Twitch chats and other friends that I've talked to about the beta so far, it is definitely still the strongest. However, like I said before, it definitely feels a bit more realistic and not just a complete pie in the sky thing so far. But I think I'm going to be doing a second video to kind of follow up on this, and I'll definitely be testing it on stream. So feel free to check out the link in the description below. All of my socials are linked there, by the way, and I usually try and do at least 1 or 2 live streams a week just to kind of get some footage for these videos. I think the main thing I want to test is some Glacor runs with a crit build. I want to revisit Solak with a crit build and see what that's looking like. I tried it with a poison build, but I'm just not the biggest fan of poison builds, and the extra Darkbow damage was nice, but I wasn't noticing it too much. But we shall have to wait and see on that one. Now, magic in the beta is kind of in an unfortunate spot where it feels good. It's very consistent damage. I was able to get back-to-back root skips, and they pretty much had the same pacing as far as the amount of damage per second that was going out. And this is due to the fact that I believe that damage squishing is in full effect in this beta right now, which a TLDR on damage squishing is that before, I believe it was 20% damage on an ability was guaranteed, and the other 80% was due to a dice roll. And essentially, they have flipped those numbers around where 80% of the damage is guaranteed and 20% is random. So there is some variety, but it's a lot more consistent as far as my understanding of that whole concept goes. And the biggest change from the previous beta update till now is we have this perk called Eruptive 2, which is just 0.5% damage per rank. So effectively, this is a 1% DPS increase. Equilibrium right now in the beta is its own perk if you want to go and test it. However, you are not able to get any critical critical hits while doing this, and in the previous update this didn't allow me to test magic at all really, because magic heavily relies on crits in order to get damage out. So seeing a free 1% damage increase, I think that's about similar to what Equilibrium 2 was doing for magic in the first place, and it felt stronger in my opinion. I did a couple Solax solos and there was definitely a skill issue on P3. The Metamorph on P4 felt very nice, and that's because Metamorph actually is 62.5% damage increase for an ultimate, or here it says 1.66x damage, whereas Sunshine is only a 1.5x, and with Sunshine, magic was getting to its original hit cap, which with using Smoke Cloud and having Grim on in the live game is 16.8k, and this hasn't really been too much of an issue for magic in any standard use case, even for when using Inquisitor, which is I think a tier 105 if it's working correctly. And so removing the hit cap and kind of doing the squishes and whatnot, it has made magic very consistent damage. It's good damage, but right now it's just getting blown out of the water by the other two styles. I think magic is going to need to see some type of increase. People were telling me earlier that Iban Staff is a strong spec. Apparently it might be meta, I'm not quite sure, but I haven't been following magic meta too closely, as I haven't been using the combat style in the live game for much of anything other than just casually running through a couple bosses. And so with all this information out there, what are my thoughts on this beta so far? I think a lot of the changes have been tied together. A lot of the quirks and oddities have been worked out of the previous updates of the beta, and so far I'm relatively happy with it. I think melee steamrolling other bosses is quite fun. However, it kind of ties back into my original hypothesis of that the bosses in RuneScape cannot handle these DPM levels. And while it is fun to see these combat styles on this type of power creep, it still has an unbalance to it. Magic needs some type of buff if they want to get it to the levels of which necromancy, range, and melee are at. I think those three styles right now are relatively interchangeable as far as DPM is concerned. Range is most likely the winner in that scenario, and I think necro and melee right now are pretty much equals. Magic is definitely lacking behind on those, so I would like to see some balance between the combat styles regardless, and maybe tone back the entire DPM of the combat system for the bosses in question to be toned back a little bit. I think it's a little bit crazy to be able to just go through and murk Raksha in 2 auto attacks of phase 1 and have Berserk pretty much carry the entirety of the damage of phase 1 and 2 just by using a lot of D-claws. The other option I have heard for this problem of the character doing too much damage for the bosses that are currently in game is that each boss could just get a 20% increase in total health, but I don't see this as being a good idea just because it's a band-aid solution and it's not addressing the elephant in the room of that we are doing way too much damage in game. I talked about this a little bit a while ago in my original necromancy video where I just kind of gave my thoughts about the style as it released, and it's been toned down a lot, but it is still extremely strong, and I still hold the belief that that level of DPM is not quite good for this game in its current state, and that overall DPM level should be brought down a bit. However, it is nice to see that range and melee are definitely on the playing field of necromancy. There's at least a realm of balance there, and if we could get magic up there as well and then tone the total DPM level of each of the styles once they're balanced, I think overall this will be a good update to bring into the game. Instead of rambling on about this for another indefinite amount of time, I think I will cut the video here. Thank you all for watching. I appreciate the viewership as always. Have a wonderful morning, evening, afternoon, nighttime, whatever it is, wherever you are, and I'll see you next time for the next video. Peace.